This is Daily Blast Live. We're talking about what you're talking about.
You all ready for this?
This is a sham.
No.
Nope.
Y'all, just stop.
Get real.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to DBL. Hi.
You talking like a kindergarten teacher.
I know. Let's get in a circle.
I know, right?
Share feelings.
I'm down with that.
I would too. All right, we are starting today with a follow-up from a story we talked about last week. If you can recall, the fashion house Balenciaga got in some serious trouble. Now, it's all over these photos showing kids with these plush teddy bear bags. The bears are wearing bondage-inspired outfits, and the brand was accused of sexualizing children. Balenciaga apologized, but there is still a ton of backlash. And just this weekend, actress Annalyn McCord and others held a small protest outside of a store in Los Angeles. Other people are posting videos showing them burning their Balenciaga items, but major retailers like Nordstrom and Neiman Marcus are still selling their products. Now, this is the creative director for Balenciaga, and he posted an apology saying, "I want to personally apologize for the wrong artistic choice. I take my responsibility. It was inappropriate to have kids promote objects that had nothing to do with them." Now, the first time we talked about this, our co-host Jeff, my enemy, just kidding, I love him, had a very, very strong take, and it did end up going very viral. So let's take a look at some of that.
Don't tell me this slipped through the cracks when you're getting a court case that features child pornography. It's disgusting. It's disturbing. Jeopardy's got to flip their whole production because of one person said something, but they wanted to be woke and do all that. How many other examples are there? 10, 20, 30, 40 years we're going back to cancel people? But this slips through the cracks. It's outrageous. And that people aren't outraged and skipping work with their posters and going to the courthouse or going to Balenciaga, and stars aren't wiping their Instagram and social media with all their Balenciaga gear is disgusting in itself.
So we want to bring this up. It has legs, and we want to continue the conversation. What do you think of the creative director's apology and the fact that he still has his job? Did he need to lose it? Talk to me about first just the apology. What do you guys think?
The apology was it was diplomatic in a way that felt a little uncomfortable.
Look cold.
Like, yeah, what was the response that he apologizes for having kids promote something that had nothing to do with them? I think it goes a step further because we're talking about endangering children and child welfare. So it's not so much that the products have nothing to do with them, it's the idea of the sexualization or conflating children with sexual images. So I don't know if that really, especially for the outrage, if that really was the appropriate response.
I sort of agree with you, Al. What do you think? I agree with Erica. I think it didn't match the outrage and really the danger that they put the kids in. I'm just, in some respects.
We fall into this weird realm with art where it's kind of, you know, almost nothing is off limits. We have the famous example of the crucifix in the jar of urine. That was 20, 30, 40 years ago, but that was done to show people like pushing the limits. I know it will offend. This is the purpose for me doing that. If, for example, I posted something on my Instagram with my children that, you know, nothing sexual, but just something that was inappropriate, when I made my response, Erica, I would say, I definitely see why people had a problem with it. This is what I was doing. I was trying to highlight injustices here, and my artistic vision came off, and I can see how that was misconstrued, so I apologize for that. But I wouldn't just be like, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how that happened. I don't understand what was going on here. I don't understand why this has been allowed to go on, not only here, because I see people burning Balenciaga, but I don't see people with the overall general outrage that I feel like we should have, where it seems like children in every. We did a story here, Erica, 2 years ago about the Boy Scouts had 5,000 registered sex offenders. We didn't get one email or text about that. We've seen this happen on Big Ten campuses. We've seen this happen in Hollywood. We've seen this happen with anywhere there are children. Nickelodeon. No one says anything. So I want us to take this outrage and expand upon it and maybe make some laws.
Regulations.
So that this does not happen.
Let me ask you this, Al. You bring up such a great point when you say that about Hollywood and all that, because there is a group of people that believe this isn't just a mistake. This is pushing an agenda. Right. This is pushing a real Hollywood sexualization of children. And I don't think that's not fair to say about it. And when you have things like US v. Williams in your court documents in the Balenciaga, and that's about child pornography, that's a deliberate choice to put that in there. What do you think, Erica?
No, I agree with you. I agree. And I think sometimes when we hear these allegations of it being the agenda for, child pornography and pedophilia, then it comes in these conspiracy theory
like, how
veins,
crazy, right?
But the truth is, there is truth to that. I think a lot of times when we hear it from the conspiracy theory vein, it's going in a totally opposite direction. But there is truth, and we know that there's truth because there's proof behind it. Yeah. So Tori, had the campaign gone without that court ruling, what would you have said? Would you have thought differently about it?
Yeah, to be honest with you, only because I would have thought it was so stupid, but they pushed art into an avant-garde way that was inappropriate.
Yeah.
But the documents had to be looked up, found, framed. Just one was framed, one's tucked in. That's a deep, US v. Williams doesn't come to the top of my head about prosecuting child pornography. So I'm not that far off from saying maybe there is some kind of agenda here, and should he not have lost his job in that way?
Well, no one loses their job anymore, which is amazing.
Especially in Hollywood.
It's just the apology, and then they just kind of wait it out, and then it just kind of goes away magically.
But what does him losing his job do? I mean, it was allowed to happen. So it's like, I understand that there should be consequences, but like, I think he's been scapegoated because at the end of the day, this was a group effort. This was not the effort of one person.
That's true.
So maybe he took to, I don't know, I'm just speculating, like, fine, I'll take the heat. Right. And there's something that's happening behind the scenes so that they can just make sure that people forget about it and they move on.
Yeah, interesting. And just so you guys know, they were going to have a lawsuit over the ad that company that did the US v. Williams, and they've dropped it because most people are going to say there's no way you didn't have final approval.
Yeah. It's impossible.
Right?
It's impossible. If you were going to post something if you went to a photographer and you were throwing up papers for your Tory 2022 photo shoot and they were landing on the ground, you would spread them out and be like, what's on these pieces of paper?
Right.
To just make sure that's your image. You're very serious about your image. Everybody would check that. There's no way that somebody didn't know, that either didn't notice that or didn't do that absolutely on purpose.
Right.
So I don't know. It's very conspicuous. My only concern here is that we don't become so myopic that we just end up focusing on Balenciaga and don't answer the bigger, harder questions like, how did 150 of our U.S. Olympians be sexually assaulted? 150. Yeah. And I hope that number's right. 118. Something disgusting.
Right.
So I just don't want us to get so focused on this that we lose sight of the forest in amongst the trees.
Yeah, right. There's a bigger issue here. Let us know what you guys think. It's a very interesting discussion coming up, and we're very proud of Jeff for going viral on that. Coming up on DBL, actor Darius McCrary from Family Matters is telling us some hilarious behind-the-scenes stories from his time on the show. And this is a good one. From Elon Musk to Liz Cheney, we have Time's shortlist for Person of the Year is out. Who deserves the title? Al Jackson is not on the list.
It's happy holiday season time.
From our DBL family to yours, we want to wish you
a happy holiday season.
A happy holiday season.
And we're talking more about like the Olympians, and I think it was Erica that said we need to focus. Like, yes, somebody can take the blame and get fired for it, but I do think that this is a coordinated effort.
Yeah.
There's no way
like an agenda.
That one wormy guy could have access to all of these. Are people making appointments. These are people covering things up.
Yeah.
These are people calling and threatening people that are going to be whistleblowers, and we've seen this at every turn.
What about Jim Jordan being in Congress?
The Ohio State wrestling scandal, Jim Acosta, who covered up the Jeffrey Epstein.
The Jeffrey Epstein
when they caught him.
Where did that go?
Jim Acosta is an example of what happens when you play ball. They got rid of the story. They did something that was illegal, which I believe in that case, they gave a plea bargain to Jeffrey Epstein without consulting the victims, which is unheard of. Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to leave prison, I think, 6 days out of 7. They had him dead to rights. He should have been under the jail, but yet
he knows where all the bodies are.
He was able to go.
He knows where everything is.
Yes, and I mean, then that's why he fell asleep and passed away. So
and yeah, let us know if you really think Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide.
But
because
I think all these things are linked. And what it you know, Jeffrey Epstein was going after vulnerable girls. R. Kelly was going after vulnerable
Big Ten
girls.
schools.
Big Ten schools are going after athletes that don't want to admit that they've been sexually assaulted. Gymnasts that have been trained since the age of 3 to never defy authority.
Yeah, right.
Like, think about, these are vulnerable children.
Children actors.
Yes, and what was happening at Penn State, that forgot what that monster's name was.
Oh no, that's Michigan State.
Yeah, but he was going, the program in which he was picking his victims was like a program for kids that were on the fringes, like barely hanging on.
The most vulnerable.
Yes, that's who they go after because they don't have parents to advocate for
They don't
them.
have the support.
Right, and that's why the...
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that song. All right, welcome back. Who do you think should be, I do, Time Magazine's Person of the Year? Time released its official short list of candidates. Again, this isn't the best person. It's just the person who changed the most amount of things in this year. Let's take a look and see what you think. One would be Elon Musk, who's made big moves this year, buying Twitter, among other things. He was Time's Person of the
Destroying Twitter,
Year.
amongst other things.
That's true. He was there last year. He was Time Person of the Year. I just want to remind everyone. Another possibility is the outgoing Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who helped chair the January 6th committee. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made the list. So did Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Then there are a few groups who are on the short list, including the U.S. Supreme Court, which struck down Roe v. Wade over the summer. The protesters in Iran who are standing up for their rights are another potential, including, may I add, Masa Amini, who is the start of all of that. And so are advocates for gun safety, who are reacting to the more than 600 mass shootings so far this year. That's more than 2 a day, if you average that out. The other options include China's President Xi Jinping and Mackenzie Scott, who's donated billions of dollars of her fortune to charity. She is Jeff Bezos' ex and doing a marvelous job, in my opinion. So, what do you think of the list? Who would you pick?
Well, since we're going with unpopular characters, Erica, Kanye West jumps to the top of my mind. Arguably the most influential artist of our generation, turned into, in my opinion, the saddest case of what can happen to an artist and example of mental illness. So unfortunately, I think Kanye West has to be there because he's been the genesis of a lot of conversation online, the genesis of a lot of hate speech online, and the genesis of a lot of, like, what do we do? How do we cancel people? Can you cancel people? So I feel like he's caused a lot of our conversations here on our show.
Yeah, you know, I don't disagree with that. My answer was a group, and it's the Billionaire Boys Club. It's the death of the Billionaire Boys Club. Like, we have witnessed, money has always been the power. It's been the go-to currency. And if you had money, then you were untouchable. And this past year, we have witnessed people who have had ungodly amounts of money be touchable and be held accountable, and also lose a lot of their wealth because of the decisions that they made. A lot of them had to do with the moral compass of the general public. Some of it had to do with hate speech. Some of it had to do with mental illness. But there was finally a time of accountability that said, no, just because you have money doesn't mean that you are Teflon.
And it wasn't always like that.
Right.
It was never. It's like the beginning of that, like a crack.
What about you, Tor?
I strongly think it's this Supreme Court, and I'll give you 3 reasons. The Roberts Court, right? And when I say that as a group, they've done groups before, but here's why. 1, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, significant change in a fundamental right that was taken away from half the population. 2, there is a lot of leakage in this court, and there are theories, and these are real theories, New York Times, Washington Post, that Alito Samuel Alito, a justice, leaked the Hobby Lobby decision to the president of Hobby Lobby beforehand. That is sacrilegious in the Supreme Court. And number 3, we have Clarence Thomas with Ginny Thomas, his wife, trying to overturn the 2020 legal election by telling her husband, who has a lot of power in that, to do it and to overturn it. So to me, this court has been a disaster for the legitimacy of what the Supreme Court means. It is crumbling, it is leaking, and it is not supporting an entire branch of government.
Yeah, I mean, we got to go, but it's just like, as you're talking, you made me have this thought. It's just like, of all the people that we're talking about 9 unelected people, and with the Billionaire Boys Club, people that just fell into money. Trump, Elon Musk was born into wealth, and this is what happens when people that don't earn anything want to try and run things. No one has decided that these people should have any power, and I think their results speak for themselves.
I agree with you. Let us know what you guys think. I know you're all going to say me. Don't. Do. Coming up on DBL, our interview with Darius McCrary from Family Matters. Eddie Winslow, he tells us all about his time playing Eddie.
After the news of Al Roker, the term blood clot spiked on Google Trends. And these are some of the top questions people are asking Google on blood clots. So we took some of these questions to our experts. Our source is Dr. Shamir Chaudhry, cardiologist at Novant Health Matthews Medical Center, the Mayo Clinic, and Weill Cornell Medicine. According to the Mayo Clinic, blood clots are gel-like clumps of blood. They may cause medical attention if they are in your legs, lungs, and brain. About 900,000 Americans are affected by blood clots each year. One of the top searches on Google, is it common to get blood clots from the COVID-19 vaccine? There was some concern that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was causing blood clots. However, according to Weill Cornell Medicine, among the more than 6.8 million recipients of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, there were just 6 possible cases of blood clots in the brain.
When it comes down to the risk versus benefit, usually no vaccine, including the vaccines for the COVID-19 infection, they are determined safe after rigorous trials, and as such they are not one of the potential causes of blood clot.
So we can verify that no, it is not common to get blood clots from the COVID-19 vaccine. The next question, does vigorous exercise cause blood clots?
Exercise as such should not cause any blood clot. Okay, in no matter of amount, like even if it's whether it's 10 minutes of walk versus running ultra marathon, it itself does not cause risk of blood clot.
In fact, in order to avoid blood clots, the Mayo Clinic encourages people to move, avoid sitting for long periods, and lower blood pressure and lose weight. So we can verify that no, vigorous exercise does not cause blood clots.
Welcome back. Our next guest changed lives all across the country with his character Eddie Winslow in Family Matters, and he continues to inspire us all with his talents as an actor, a singer, and producer across movies and TV. Earlier, we spoke with Darius McCrary about some unforgettable stories with his cast and how he dealt with rising fame in the 90s. Take a look. You guys, Darius McCrary, welcome to DBL. Darius!
Hey.
I think my voice.
So much. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. My voice just cracked because I just knew I was going to marry you growing up, right?
Well, Erica, let me let you know something. I was pleased to hear that you paid that loan back, but I would have wrote a bad check for you, baby. I just want you to know.
Thank you for keeping this show off the tracks, because that's where we start and finish. So let's talk about you, because your character, Eddie Winslow, is legendary. When did you know that Family Matters was a hit?
Well, honestly, we knew it was a hit from the beginning. I mean, it was Tom Miller and Bob Boyette, and their names are synonymous with so much success, from Perfect Strangers to Laverne and Shirley to Happy Days. So, we knew what it was going in, and we were the only African-American or black show, should I say, on ABC at the time. The other show that was on television was Cosby, so we knew we had a slot and a shot.
Yeah, well, you guys made the most of it. I saw you listening to our show in the previous block. You could tell we're family. We spent so much time together, and I can only imagine you know it. Yeah, well, you lived it, man. You know, you were on a show that was like so much like a family that we heard that you actually pulled the dad move with Reginald VelJohnson. Like, talk to us about what happened with the dad move.
Oh my God, Reginald VelJohnson, first off, was just amazing. He is amazing. He's still a major part of my life. And growing up, it was like having two sets of parents. And my mom and dad split after years of marriage, and they're still great friends, and they had a great relationship. But Reggie stepped in, and a lot of times he would check me when I would be out of pocket. And sometimes it was so funny. One of the coolest things for me was when I wanted to impress a young lady, because I still lived with my mama at the time, growing up. I wasn't a scrub, but I was living with my mama.
You weren't in the passenger side, though.
I would pull up at Reginald's house because I knew how to get inside, and he had the most amazing view of Universal City. So I'd be in the backyard, kicking it, chilling, serving champagne. You know, I was drinking age, or maybe not. Reggie would pop in, and he'd be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Oh, baby, that's just my pops. You know, I live with my daddy. You know, don't pay him no attention." "Hey, Dad. Hey, this is Tasha." You know, I get extra points. He's like, "Oh my God, it's your TV Dad. You guys, yeah, baby."
That's what's up. Yeah, you roll with it.
Darius, congratulations on looking exactly the same. By the way, you look exactly the same. But you're still close. You're still close friends with Jaleel White. As his character started to become the main focus on the series, how did you handle that as a young actor, and were you resentful in any way?
First off, Jaleel White is my dog, okay? That is my brother. The only thing that probably would make us closer is if we came out of the same womb. Secondly, when you are on a rocket ship to the moon, you don't care who the pilot is. We're going to the moon, baby. So, yeah. I mean, you know, success is to be shared, and it's nothing to have success without someone you love to share it with. And I love Jaleel White. Emphatically, we talk at least 2 or 3 times a week, at least. And it was awesome to watch him blossom and to begin to come into his own. And I still believe in my heart of hearts that you haven't even seen Jaleel scratch the surface of what he's really capable of doing. You got to remember, we were doing this as babies. He was doing the Jeffersons before Family Matters. And I mean, I was in movies like Mississippi Burning before Family Matters, which won an Oscar. So it's like, you know, I mean, we just scratching the surface here. And thank you for that awesome compliment. I work very hard at it.
That's what's up. And Jeff, you did a movie with Jaleel White. You don't even mention it.
I know. You can speak to
Jaleel's my dog, too. Yeah. We did a movie together. We did a movie. Tell him Jeff said what's up.
DBL Nation, be sure to follow Darius on Instagram at Darius McCrary. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Appreciate you, bro. Thanks, man.
What a fun
guys. All right, bye. Thank you.
More than 200 million cartons of Little Debbie products are sold each year. You probably have your favorite, like Swiss cake roll or oatmeal cream pie. But several Verify viewers reached out after they heard the company's sweets are being discontinued. So let's verify. Is Little Debbie going out of business? Our sources are the makers of Little Debbie brand products, McKee Foods Corporation, the Defense Commissary Agency, and an independent check of Little Debbie products at several stores. Little Debbie products were launched in 1960 and are sold at stores worldwide. In the 90s, they started appearing on the shelves at U.S. military commissaries and exchanges, which are stores located on military bases. McKee told Verify it stopped providing Little Debbie products to commissaries and exchanges on September 1st, citing higher costs. Verify conducted an independent check of commissaries in Maryland, Idaho, and Japan, and were unable to find Little Debbie products in stock. The Defense Commissary Agency confirmed it's no longer selling the brand's snack cakes. Little Debbie also recently lost its supplier in Canada and is not actively seeking a replacement. McKee says you can still find Little Debbie products in U.S. grocery stores, adding it has no plans to shut down. So, no, Little Debbie is not going out of business. Sales were only discontinued at military commissaries and exchanges. With you at Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Are you skeptical of headlines and what you see on social media? We are too. The Verify newsletter helps you distinguish between true and false information by answering your questions. It provides fast facts on trending topics, spotlights major stories, and even includes a daily fun fact for all those trivia buffs out there. Get Verify's fast facts delivered every weekday to your email inbox. Go to verifythis.com/email to check it out.
One Verify viewer asked us by text if there's anything they can do to keep their tree fresh. So let's verify. Does adding something to the water keep your tree fresh longer? Our sources are the National Christmas Tree Association and Kathy Crawley, an assistant professor of plant biology at Unity College, who explains the trick to keeping a tree fresh starts with making sure you buy a fresh tree to begin with.
And then when you get it home, make sure you cut off the base of the trunk, just a narrow disc, maybe half an inch, to make sure that the base of the trunk is open and that water will be able to enter the tree.
Okay, but what happens once your tree is set up and decorated? The NCTA says to ensure water is always touching the base, while some websites swear by adding something extra like sugar, soda, and even vodka. Crawley says that can actually do more harm than good.
It conceivably could stop the tree from taking up as much water as it needs if you add a lot of sugar to the water. Truly, all the tree needs is basic fresh water.
So it's false that adding something to the water helps keep your tree fresh longer. Crawley says the goal of the water is to help keep the tree hydrated and delay the branches from quickly becoming brown, dry, and brittle, a potential fire hazard. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Welcome back. Winter is the perfect time to remodel your bathroom, and getting a new tub is a great way to stay warm during those chilly, chilly days. We're talking about it in today's tip, sponsored by Jacuzzi. So there are several advantages to remodeling your bathroom during the winter. If you're planning to sell your house in the spring, a remodeled bathroom is a great way to add value to your home. Or maybe you just want to spruce up your spare bathroom for guests after all of the use it gets during the holidays, or you just want to have that relaxing master bathroom you've always dreamed of. Whatever the reason may be, Jacuzzi can finally bring you your ideal bathroom to life. Jacuzzi offers unmatched, stress-free remodeling process, so visit jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 1-800-523-1523. We also have some sad news here. A longtime former cast member who I grew up watching of Sesame Street has passed away. This is Bob McGrath. He played Bob Johnson on Sesame Street for nearly 50 years and 47 seasons. Wow. His family confirmed he died peacefully at his home at 90 years old. He started on the show back in 1969, like with the pilot, and was remembered for songs like People in Your Neighborhood and Sing a Song. Bob stayed with the show until 2017. And they're people, when you see them, they give you a feeling. That man, just a warm, cozy, safe feeling.
Yeah, what a life. 90 years. Who knew?
Wow. My God. Yeah.
From the pilot.
From the pilot. And this person has been there in the living rooms teaching and loving. So we wish him and his family the best.
Run.
Prayers and thoughts, of course. DBL's new every day. We'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.
Sing a song. Sing a song. Make it simple to last your whole life long. Don't worry that it's not good enough for anyone else to hear. Sing